Silence commands more than words because silence is not absence, it is presence without noise. When a man chooses not to speak, the room does not feel emptier, it feels heavier. Words are everywhere, spilling out of every conversation, every message, every desperate attempt to be heard. But silence is rare, and rarity always carries weight. When you stop filling space with explanations, with overactions, with constant validation seeking, you create contrast. That contrast makes people lean in, pay attention, and wonder what is happening beneath the surface. Silence is not about shutting down, it is about stepping into a deeper level of influence where you no longer need to announce your value because your energy communicates it without sound. Most men believe that talking more makes them understood, that more convincing makes them persuasive, that more explaining makes them respected. The opposite is true. The more you speak to justify yourself, the less weight your words carry. When you choose restraint, when you say less, every word you do share becomes more valuable. The Stoics knew this truth. Mastery of the tongue begins with mastery of the self. If you cannot control the impulse to respond to every provocation, to argue with every doubt, to fight every accusation, you are still ruled by others. But when you control your voice, when you decide that silence serves you better than reaction, you reveal authority. People feel the power of what is unspoken. Silence also creates a gap, and in that gap, curiosity is born. Human nature abhors uncertainty. When someone expects a reaction and none comes, the mind begins to race. Why didn't he respond? What is he thinking? Does he not care? Is he stronger than I thought? This uncertainty pulls others closer, not because you manipulated them, but because your silence triggered reflection. Words explain. Silence makes others explain you to themselves. And when people are busy explaining you, they are investing energy in you. That energy deepens their attention, and attention always precedes respect. There is also a discipline in silence that signals strength more than any loud defense ever could. Anyone can raise their voice, fire off messages, argue endlessly, or demand to be understood. It takes far more composure to remain still, to trust that silence will communicate more than noise. That composure is rare, and rarity again translates into value. A man who is not quick to react shows that he is not ruled by impulse. A man who can hold his peace shows he is not desperate for validation. That restraint is magnetic because it proves stability, and stability is what others seek when they test your boundaries. Silence is not avoidance, it is presence without concession. It does not mean you are disengaged, it means you have chosen not to fight battles that do not need words. You are conserving energy for actions that matter. Silence is strategy, it resets the frame of interaction. When you withhold your immediate response, you regain the upper hand in timing. You decide when to engage, how to engage, and on what terms. This subtle shift makes people realize they are not in control of you. They cannot predict you, they cannot pull you into their rhythm. You remain in your own rhythm, and that rhythm is what draws them toward you. In truth, silence makes people project their own thoughts, fears, and desires onto you. What they see in your silence often reveals more about them than it does about you. Some will feel unsettled because they expected weakness and found strength. Some will feel respect because they see restraint where others would have exploded. Some will feel curiosity because they cannot read you. And some will feel attraction because silence radiates the confidence of a man who does not beg to be understood. When you master silence, you master presence. You no longer fear that your words will be ignored because you understand that the quiet speaks louder. You no longer waste energy trying to prove yourself because you know your value is not up for debate. You no longer need to react because you trust that stillness can carry more influence than noise ever could. In that silence, you stop chasing, you stop pleading, you stop explaining. You simply exist in strength, and people feel that strength whether they want to or not. That is why silence commands more than words. Because when you say less, people listen harder, and when you choose quiet, the world leans in. Self-control signals strength because it reveals mastery over the one battle that matters most, the battle within. Anyone can lose their temper, anyone can react to provocation, anyone can lash out when emotions are stirred. That takes no discipline. True strength lies in the ability to remain calm when the world tries to pull you into chaos. When someone pushes your buttons, and you refuse to give them the satisfaction of watching you explode, you show that your emotions belong to you and no one else. That is inner authority, and it is far more powerful than any outward display of aggression. Resisting the urge to react demonstrates that you are not easily controlled. People often test others by provoking them, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously. They want to see if you can be rattled, if your sense of worth depends on how others treat you, if you will abandon your principles in the heat of the moment. When you stay grounded, when you resist the pull to respond impulsively, you communicate that your center cannot be shaken. That stability commands respect because it is rare. Most people live at the mercy of their impulses. Few can resist them. Self-control is not weakness, it is patience sharpened into power. A man who can pause, breathe, and choose his response instead of reacting blindly is a man who holds the upper hand. This does not mean silence in every situation, but it does mean control over when and how to speak. It means you are not dragged into every battle. It means you conserve your energy for the moments that truly matter. When others realize they cannot provoke you into losing your composure, they begin to see you differently. They understand you are not desperate for approval, not easily manipulated, not swayed by temporary emotions. That realization builds respect even in those who intended to undermine you. Stoic psychology teaches that the mind is sovereign. What happens outside you is not always your choice, but how you interpret and respond to it is always yours. If you hand that control away, you become a puppet, reacting to every word, every glance, every test. If you hold on to it, you remain the author of your story. That authority cannot be faked. It must be cultivated in the small moments. Choosing not to argue when it is unnecessary. Choosing not to raise your voice when calm would serve you better. Choosing not to seek revenge when patience will reveal the truth. Each act of restraint sharpens your discipline, and that discipline shines as strength. The urge to react is natural, but the ability to resist it is transformational. Imagine someone insults you, waiting for anger to surface. If you meet their expectation, you confirm their power over you. But if you remain composed, their attempt loses its edge. Your self-control exposes their lack of it. That contrast is powerful. It flips the dynamic and forces them to question themselves rather than you. In that moment, your authority becomes undeniable because you have shown that no one else can dictate your state of mind. Self-control also extends beyond confrontation. It shows in how you handle temptation, how you manage desires, how you navigate setbacks. The man who cannot control his impulses will chase distractions, sabotage opportunities, and undermine his own growth. The man who can control them, however, channels his energy toward purpose. He does not fall into every trap. He does not waste time on what diminishes him. He does not beg for attention from those who withhold it. His restraint makes him magnetic because it reveals that he is guided by something higher than temporary feelings. Strength is often misunderstood as force, but real strength is control. Control of your voice, control of your actions, control of your emotions. The storm may rage around you, but if you can remain calm, you become the anchor others look toward. They may not admit it, but they feel it. They feel safer around someone who does not lose himself to anger, lust, or fear. They respect the man who can stand still while everyone else collapses into reaction. Self-control signals strength because it shows mastery where most people are slaves. It reveals that you are not governed by circumstances, not weakened by provocation, not bound to immediate gratification. It tells the world that you move with intention, not impulse. And when people recognize that authority, they cannot help but treat you differently. They may test you again, but each time you hold your ground, their respect deepens. In the end, resisting the urge to react is not silence for the sake of silence. It is silence born from power, and that power speaks louder than any reaction ever could. Space creates curiosity because the human mind is wired to notice what is missing more than what is constantly present. When something or someone is always available, the value is taken for granted. Predictability dulls interest, but absence sparks imagination. The moment you step back, the space you leave behind begins to work in ways your words never could. It makes others wonder, it forces them to think, and it shifts the balance of attention from you chasing them to them chasing the meaning of your absence. Curiosity thrives in uncertainty. When you are always present, always responding, always showing up, there is no mystery left to solve. You become easy to understand, easy to predict, and easy to overlook. But when you create space, you disrupt the pattern. Suddenly, the mind of the other person is confronted with unanswered questions. Why isn't he around? What is he doing? Who has his attention? Did something change? These questions linger and echo in the silence you leave behind. The more they try to fill the gaps, the more invested they become in thinking about you. That investment is attention, and attention is the first step to attraction and respect. Absence has always been one of the strongest forces in relationships because it flips the script of value. People assume they will always have access to what is near them, but once that access is reduced, its worth grows. This is why scarcity increases desire. A book that is rare is more treasured than a book that can be found everywhere. A resource that is limited is protected, while abundance often leads to waste. Human connection is no different. When you choose to step back, you show that your presence is not infinite, not free, not something to be consumed without thought. That scarcity forces people to recognize what they risk losing. But creating space is not about playing games or withholding out of insecurity. It is about aligning with your own value and demonstrating that your time and energy are not endlessly available. When you retreat with purpose, you give the other person room to feel the weight of your absence. That space is where respect is born. If you never step back, they never get the chance to notice your importance. If you never create distance, they never get the chance to feel the difference between life with you and life without you. The contrast is what awakens attention. In many cases, presence can actually numb curiosity because it removes the unknown. When someone knows everything about you, when they can always reach you, when you never miss a call or delay a reply, there is no suspense, no edge, no reason for them to lean in. But once you create even a small amount of distance, the unknown begins to grow. The imagination fills in blanks that you don't have to. That unknown is often more powerful than any story you could tell. Curiosity feeds on gaps, and space provides them. Space also signals strength because it shows you are not dependent on constant closeness for your sense of worth. It demonstrates you have your own path, your own rhythm, your own mission beyond immediate interaction. That independence is magnetic because it forces others to recognize that you are not defined by them. You do not orbit around them. Instead, you carry your own gravity, and they feel the pull when you are not there. Absence draws attention because it cannot be ignored. Presence can blend into the background, but absence highlights itself. Think of music. The silence between notes makes the melody powerful. Without pauses, it would be noise. Life works the same way. The pauses, the gaps, the moments of distance give shape to the relationship. Without them, the connection loses depth. With them, curiosity is always alive, always wondering, always drawn toward you. When you learn to master space, you no longer fear being forgotten, because you understand that absence works in your favor when combined with strength and purpose. You trust that stepping back creates more pull than clinging tighter. You know that curiosity cannot be forced with words, but it can be sparked with distance. And once curiosity takes root, attention follows, and in that attention, value rises. That is why space creates curiosity, because absence has the power to pull focus more strongly than presence ever could. Detachment reveals value because the moment you demonstrate that you can walk away, you show that you cannot be easily owned. Most people cling, they hold on tightly, they beg, they argue, they do anything to avoid losing what they want. That desperation lowers their value because it communicates that they see themselves as replaceable, as someone who cannot survive without the other. Detachment is the opposite. It is the calm refusal to chain your identity to someone else's approval. When you can let go, you reveal that your worth does not depend on who stays or who leaves. That strength makes others see you differently, not as something they can use at will, but as something they must respect. Walking away is not about bitterness or coldness. It is about clarity. It is about knowing what you bring to the table and refusing to compromise it just to hold on to someone who does not recognize it. That decision creates gravity. When someone realizes you are not clinging to them, they begin to question why. They wonder what you know about yourself that gives you the courage to let go. That wondering is a form of respect because it shows them you are not desperate for validation. And respect always creates more attraction than neediness ever could. Value is always connected to scarcity. The more abundant something is, the less people notice it. The rarer it is, the more people protect it. If you are always available, always forgiving, always bending to someone else's demands, you become abundant. They know they can have you at any time, under any condition. But when you are willing to detach, when you are ready to walk away from what does not serve you, you become scarce. That scarcity does not push people away, it pulls them in. It forces them to reconsider what they thought they could take for granted. Detachment also shows strength of mind. Anyone can hold on. It takes real inner authority to let go without fear. To release something you desire is to prove that your foundation is not dependent on external possession. That kind of strength is rare, and because it is rare, it is valuable. People notice when you are not ruled by attachment, when you can move forward without crumbling, when you can smile at loss and continue walking. That kind of resilience cannot be faked, and it makes others realize you are someone who will never be easily controlled. There is also freedom in detachment. Once you realize that you are not bound to what others give or withhold, you move differently. You are lighter, calmer, harder to shake. You stop negotiating your worth in someone else's marketplace, and you start living according to your own terms. That shift in energy changes how people experience you. They can sense that you are not chained, and that makes your presence more magnetic. Because people always want what is not desperate to be wanted. They are drawn to what they cannot fully own. Walking away also reveals the difference between need and choice. When you cling, you communicate need. When you detach, you communicate choice. Need lowers value because it shows dependency. Choice raises value because it shows freedom. Freedom is attractive because it signals abundance of options. When you walk away, you show that you are choosing not to stay, not because you cannot, but because you refuse to be treated as less than you are worth. That distinction is powerful. It makes people think twice before underestimating you again. Detachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean you feel nothing or that you are incapable of love, care, or loyalty. It means you are not enslaved by those feelings. It means you can hold them without letting them dictate your self-worth. It means you can give your heart without fearing its loss. And that balance is what makes your love, your time, and your presence even more valuable. When you learn to detach, you begin to radiate a quiet strength that cannot be faked. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop pleading and start commanding attention. You stop fearing loss and start inspiring respect. Walking away becomes less about rejection and more about revelation, revealing to the other person and to yourself that you were never something to be owned, but always something to be honored. And in that realization, your value shines brighter than ever. Stillness resets dynamics because in a world full of noise, reaction, and endless motion, the one who can hold steady changes the entire frame of interaction. Most people respond instantly, driven by impulse, emotion, or fear of losing control. They argue back, they rush to explain, they beg to be heard. That is predictable, and predictable behavior gives power away. But when you choose stillness, when you remain silent instead of reacting, you break the pattern. Suddenly the other person no longer knows how to read you, how to control you, how to pull you into their rhythm. The dynamic shifts because stillness is unexpected, and what is unexpected creates influence. Silence is not weakness, it is leverage. When you do not react, you create space, and in that space the other person begins to feel the weight of their own words and actions. They are forced to sit with what they have said, forced to question your calm, forced to re-engage with you on terms they did not anticipate. You are no longer playing their game, you are inviting them into yours. That subtle shift resets the balance of power without you needing to raise your voice or argue your position. Stillness communicates something few words can. It shows mastery of, say, anyone can lash out, anyone can argue, anyone can fire back immediately. It takes discipline to pause. That pause makes people rethink. They begin to feel the silence pressing against them, creating tension they did not expect. And because human beings are wired to resolve tension, they lean in, they try to fill the silence, they adjust their tone, they soften their stance. Without saying anything, you have shifted the energy. You have forced re-engagement, not by pushing harder, but by holding your ground with calmness. This is why stillness is often more persuasive than speech. Words can be dismissed, debated, or ignored, but silence is undeniable. It cannot be interrupted because it does not compete. It simply exists, and its presence grows heavier the longer it lasts. People often reveal themselves more in your silence than in your questions. They over-explain, they correct themselves, they expose insecurities. Your stillness acts like a mirror, reflecting their state back to them. That mirror resets the dynamic, because they become aware not only of their actions, but also of your unshaken composure. When you are still, you show that you are not desperate for resolution on someone else's timeline. You are patient, and patience is power. It proves that you are not enslaved by urgency or fear of loss. You are willing to wait, willing to let silence do the heavy lifting, willing to let the other person come toward you instead of rushing toward them. That patience shifts the relationship from pursuit to attraction. It makes them re-engage with you on your terms because you are no longer chasing, you are anchoring. Stillness also protects your energy. When you refuse to be dragged into chaos, you conserve your focus for what matters most. Instead of scattering your attention on unnecessary conflicts, you hold it within yourself. That focus radiates. People feel it. They sense you are not easily distracted, not easily manipulated, not easily broken. And because they feel that steadiness, they instinctively treat you with more respect. The dynamic changes not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. The power of stillness lies in its ability to shift unseen forces. You may say nothing, yet the silence speaks. You may not move, yet your calm presence changes the atmosphere. You may appear passive, but the reality is active dominance. You are dictating the rhythm, controlling the pace, and forcing others to adjust to you. That is influence at its purest. When you embrace stillness, you no longer fight for control, because you already own it. You no longer chase validation, because your silence validates itself. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because your calmness speaks more clearly than words could. And in that stillness, you reset the dynamic entirely. The frame no longer belongs to them, it belongs to you. They are compelled to re-engage, not because you push, but because you stood firm. That is the quiet authority of stillness, the kind that bends the world toward your rhythm without you ever lifting your voice. Purpose behind silence matters because silence without intention is nothing more than avoidance, but silence with intention becomes power. Many people confuse the two. They retreat into quiet not because they are strong, but because they are afraid. They withdraw not out of discipline, but out of insecurity. That kind of silence does not command respect, it communicates weakness. But when silence is deliberate, when it is chosen as a tool rather than a refuge, it transforms the way others see you. It becomes a signal of control, of focus, of clarity. It shows that you are not running from confrontation, but choosing when and how to engage on your own terms. Intentional silence is rooted in self-awareness. You know exactly why you are withholding your words. It could be to observe more closely, to allow space for the other person to reveal themselves, or to maintain composure in a moment of provocation. Whatever the reason, it is chosen, not forced. That choice is what communicates strength. Others can sense the difference between silence that is nervous and silence that is powerful. Nervous silence feels uncertain. Powerful silence feels grounded. It carries weight precisely because it is not accidental. When silence has purpose, it sharpens the impact of your words when you do choose to speak. If you are always talking, always explaining, always justifying, your voice becomes background noise. But if you wait, if you allow silence to build tension and curiosity, then the moment you finally speak, every word lands with greater weight. The contrast gives your message gravity. People listen harder, not because you raised your voice, but because your silence made them lean in. Purposeful silence turns communication into strategy rather than habit. It also reveals discipline over impulse. Most arguments escalate because people cannot resist the urge to respond instantly. They feel attacked and they strike back. They feel misunderstood and they rush to defend themselves. But when you choose intentional silence, you prove you are not governed by impulse. You prove you can sit with discomfort without breaking. That calm unsettles others because they expect reaction and receive stillness instead. They are forced to confront their own emotions while you remain centered. In that gap, the balance of power shifts. Silence with purpose is also a form of respect for yourself. It communicates that not every situation deserves your energy, not every word deserves your response, not every conflict deserves your presence. By withholding reaction, you set boundaries without needing to announce them. You show that your attention is not something that can be demanded at will. It must be earned. That restraint increases your value because it makes clear that your voice is not cheap. It is reserved for what matters. Avoidant silence, on the other hand, lowers value. If you go quiet because you are afraid to speak, people sense the fear. If you withdraw because you lack confidence, they interpret it as weakness. That kind of silence gives power away because it signals you have no control over the situation. The difference between avoidance and purpose is intention. One hides, the other holds ground. One is passive, the other is active. One diminishes you, the other elevates you. When your silence has a reason, you own the moment. You are not escaping it, you are shaping it. You are letting others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. You are buying yourself time to think while they scramble to interpret you. You are sending the message that you do not move unless you decide it is necessary. That level of restraint is intimidating to some, attractive to others, but respected by all. Purpose behind silence matters because silence is not neutral. It always communicates something. If you are silent out of fear, it communicates weakness. If you are silent out of strength, it communicates authority. The difference is in the intention you carry. When you choose silence, not because you cannot speak, but because you decide you do not need to, you demonstrate the highest form of powered control over yourself. And that control makes the world adjust to you instead of you adjusting to it.